I'm feeling like we need to get a deal. We need to have the issues that have been going on off the table so that higher education can move forward. I mean, obviously, it's a enormous historic result. 81% of people who um, voted in favour of strike action. 84% voted in favour of strike action over the particular issue of the pension. And it was something like a 57% turnout across all universities that were balloted. And so previously that hasn't happened before. There were individual universities voting, and this time it's sector wide. So what needs to happen is that the university employers need to reverse the pension cuts that they've tried to drive through. You might know that me and Professor Neil Davies, who's now at UCL, and 6,000 donors contributed to a court case against the pension fund directors. We just got leave to appeal to the Court of Appeal. The test is to get there that we have a real prospect of success. And we're saying that they abused their power by predicting a deficit, which was nonsense, and trying to drive through pension cuts. Pensions can sound a bit boring, but the basic thing is a 30% cut to people's retirement income. And then pay across universities has stagnated, gone down in real terms by 20% since 2010. So that's got to reverse. Students are paying ever more money in tuition fees. It's obscene how much tuition fees have gone up, and the money isn't going into teaching, and it's not going into research. So people at universities need to be paid more for the work that they do. And we've got to stop the gender pay gap, the race pay gap, the disability pay gap. It's just not right that women are earning 81 pence in the pound compared to men. This is 2022. It should be the whole pound. And there shouldn't be any discrimination, direct or indirect, on grounds of race or disability. And the final thing is job security. So particularly younger academics face very precarious careers at the beginning. It's seen as a good job to go into universities. This is true, but institutions shouldn't be taking advantage of people wanting to do something good like education by paying them poverty wages and keeping people on fixed term or casual contracts. So long answer to your question is I'm actually sad that the university sector is being pushed into balloting for strike action. We need a resolution, and we need fundamentally to rethink how our universities work for the future. This is an easy answer. We just had a longer ballot period. We give people sort of 5 or 6 weeks. So I suppose universities have kind of thought that when particular university branches didn't reach a ballot threshold, this is a sign that staff didn't care. That's just not true. But it takes a long time to organise a postal ballot and to get the turnout. You might be interested to know that, we have online voting for so many things, and we could have it for trade union votes and also for strike ballots. The Conservative government has refused to legislate to allow electronic voting. And the reason they want to do that is they want to suppress strike action. So what you're seeing at the moment with this ridiculous pantomime in the Conservative Party between Johnson to Truss and now to Sunak is a group of people who simply want to suppress wages for people at work. It's fine to get paid millions and millions if you work for Goldman Sachs, but if you're providing the essential infrastructure of the country, you're a key worker like a nurse or a teacher, transport worker, then they don't have any time for you, and they don't want people to organise for fair wages. But so simple answer is longer ballot period, bigger turnout. But that's a really good question. I'll just explain a bit. Fundamentally, we've had an improvement gradually in the working relationship with KCL management. It's very important that we have a partnership at work between the staff on the one hand and the small and often very, very professional group of people that run the day-to-day management issues in the university. But we've still got a lot of outstanding issues. We need to have a rise in the London waiting. We need concrete action to end the gender pay gap. That particularly means looking at childcare and equalising and raising parental leave, because childcare issues are one of the big obstacles to ending the gender pay gap. We need restoration of the right for staff to vote for the governing body. So we've got a petition, KCL is democratic.net, that says that there should be a majority elected council. We need a written collective agreement, and we need staff oversight over job security. What you're referring to on the agreement with management, I think, is we did a joint statement earlier in the year about the pension situation. And what that said is we agree on a number of things, like our pension fund should not be investing in fossil fuels anymore. I mean, it is destroying the planet. It's a bad investment. We need to get out of coal and oil and gas, stop propping up dictators like Putin or MBS in Saudi Arabia or any of the others. We need to stop fossil fuels. We need to save the planet. We also need the principle of joint management in the pension fund, so that employers and employees at least have an equal voice. If not, employees and beneficiaries need to have a majority voice, because it's their money, their pension at risk. But so we agree on the principle of equal management of the pension fund. What was left ambiguous in that statement is whether King's College London was going to recommend, in a consultation with employers, cuts to the pension. We thought that we had been reasonably clear that that would not be the way that they should respond in the consultation. But then, unfortunately, the consultation submission from King's did support massive cuts to the pension. So, as I said before, about 30% cut to people's retirement pay. We should have, in retrospect, clarified what we thought was going to be done. That was unfortunate. And it wasn't in King's College London's interest to be advocating cuts for its staff. But because of our court case, and because of the financial turmoil to do with the mini budget, the failed CEO of the pension fund has now resigned. He was called Bill Galvin, so he's gone, and that's a very good thing, because he's been an absolute disaster. He's driven through a lot of the pension cuts. It's nonsense that the pension had deficit. So that's very important, and that means that it's much more likely the deal can be done to restore pension benefits. What we should be doing is we should be cutting the cost of administering the pension fund and using the extra money that you save from savings on bureaucracy to fund better benefits. So that's where we can, find common agreement that employers and employees should both be paying less for retirement plans, and the pension fund needs to cut its costs, not the pension. We had, in previous cases of industrial action, universities each being individually balloted. So King's, UCL, LSE, would all have individual ballots, and under something called the Trade Union Act 2016, there is a requirement that each university branch meets a 50% turnout threshold for a ballot to be effective in order to have a mandate to take strike action. So to give an analogy, although a Conservative council member can be elected with something like 10 or 20% of people turning out an election, and that's fine, they get into office, when you have a ballot for strike action, it's a requirement under the Conservative 2016 legislation that you need to have 50% in order for people to do anything. So that's a measure that is deliberately designed to suppress workers taking collective action for fair wages. So what is different this time is that instead of trying to get all the universities individually to reach the 50% threshold, there was a national ballot and all the universities together, and the turnout was 57%. So that means every single university all at once or every university staff member could potentially go out on strike. So in other words, the entire UK university system could be brought to a standstill. And I don't think that's in anyone's interests. Really, it would be management forcing a shutdown. So we often think of workers taking strike action and leaving the building, but what's really happening is that management is going into a shutdown mode because they want to cut pay and they don't want to change anything. So that's the mentality that's got to change. Now all that's happening is that people are talking about the underlying issues rather than sort of branding it as four fights. Really, it's five things, but it's all one fundamental issue, and that fundamental issue is that people are working longer hours for lower wages, lower pay, and this has been happening especially since 2010. But we can zoom back to the bigger trends over the last century or half a century. And in Britain, we've had society becoming more and more unequal. Wealth is concentrated to the top. People on middle incomes have stagnated or fallen in their pay. People at the lower end have fallen especially hard in Britain. And that's a trend that needs to reverse. Yeah, I mean, pay, security, pensions, equality. Whatever way you want to package it, it's really just one big thing, which is about reversing the decline in Britain. Nobody knows yet. So what happens now is that the union negotiators meet with the employer negotiators, and they need to come up with a deal. And the ball is really in the university employers' court. So they need to bargain in good faith and try and find a resolution. So they've offered pay rises of a few percent when inflation is at 10, 12%, real terms pay cuts for everybody at a time when universities have massive surpluses. So if we just look at King's College London, you can go to the financial accounts in the last year's annual report, and you'll see that King's had a surplus of £80 million. Now, that money could pay for a pay rise many times over. A pay rise on current figures of £2,000 for every employee in the college. And that would only cost 20 million. You'd still have 60 million pounds left over. And you've got these incredible surpluses being generated, by your tuition fees and the tuition fees of every other student that have been going up and up and up. And what university managers have been doing, I think probably out of habit rather than out of malice, but it's happening one way or another, is they're hoarding that cash or putting them into fancy buildings, but they're not caring about the people who study and who work inside the buildings. We need to care about people, not just concrete. Could there be strikes this term? That will be up to what we call. There's a National Executive Committee of the union. If negotiations do not work, then strike action could be called. Branches will be saying what their opinions are about when strike action, if it needs to happen, will be most effective. But I just want to emphasize what's really happening, because there's always two sides to this. What's really happening is that management's gone into shutdown mode and it needs to bargain in good faith. Every student that I've spoken to supports the idea that their tuition fee money should go into their teaching and into research, not into exorbitant pay packages for vice chancellors or principals, not into fancy buildings that aren't places and spaces where people can enjoy because there's so much security around them that it doesn't feel like they're at home. Students don't want to see a rise in the gender pay gap, in the race pay gap, in the disability pay gap. Students want to see a more democratic society, a more democratic workplace, including at their university. We shouldn't have our governing body on our council being, majority selected by itself. And this is common under lots of university constitutions around the country. Interestingly, some of the best universities Cambridge is one. Scottish universities are very good. They have a much higher proportion of elected members of their governing body that ultimately make decisions. King's used to as well. Under the King's College London Act of 1997, it said that roughly a third of the governing body would be elected. So students do not support authoritarianism in the way that our universities are run. They don't support poverty pay. And when you ask people, well, do you support action? Most people understand that it's a last resort, but sometimes it's necessary. So we've had huge support from students on picket lines, but this shouldn't be happening. I mean, we shouldn't be having to do any of this. We come to work, to teach for the joy of education and research. So I very much hope that we continue to get the same student support as we have before. Please tell the managers of the universities to start investing in your education. And that means investing in teaching, it means investing in research. I mean, really what we need in the longer term is something like a national education service, free at the point of use, paid through fair tax rather than forced fees that keep on going up and up and up and taking an ever higher proportion of people's income. So what I would say to all students who are listening is it'd be great to have your support, but also make your voice heard. Tell the management of the university that we want to see democratic change for fair pay, for more equality, and for more security. And then, I mean, the answers are ever so easy. It doesn't even cost that much, as I've illustrated. Surplus of 80 million at King's, 20 million to have fair pay. Democracy is costless. Job security is costless. In fact, it's a benefit. You'll have more innovation when people feel more secure. Ending the gender and race pay gaps, that's got to be a good thing. It's got to be a win for everyone. So, these answers are so easy, and employers just need to sort of wake up and see the future that's beckoning towards them.